Hi, everybody. This is Melissa Fenton with Click to Science. So glad you could join us today for the Informal Science Methods webinar in partnership with the New York Network for Youth Success. I am the Extension Educator for Click to Science and also serve as the Project Manager. And I'm so excited that you could join me and my colleague,
Andrew Frericks. I'm a science education specialist here in Nebraska, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you as we talk about how to make science engaging and effective and out of school time.
Great, thanks so much, Sandra. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing our webcam because it's a little distracting both for us and for the audience to see us the whole time we are presenting. So we are going to get started right away on the content that we have prepared for you because we have a busy webinar and I want to make sure we get to everything. So I want to give you a little bit of an introduction into what Click to Science PD is. We launched in January of 2015, and since that time we've continued to build out our resources and website, including new learning modules, new professional development resources, crosswalks with next generation science standards, Common Core standards, and DOS, and on-demand webinars. So if you are not registered for Click to Science, I really encourage you to do so either now or at the end of the webinar. It is free, but you have to be registered to download any of the activities or professional development resources that we're going to talk about today as part of this webinar. So all of our resources support the Click to Science model of professional development that blends video-based learning modules with face-to-face and virtual professional development guides. The guides are designed to take minimal prep work for those facilitating the professional development. Essentially, you can read through the guide, make notes to make it your own, gather supplies, and deliver the content for a meaningful professional development experience for your staff. Our resources focus on the soft skills staff need to facilitate quality STEM activities in out-of-school time. So it's not focused on any one specific curriculum, like teaching youth how to lead all of the activities in that curriculum. It's just focused on the skills that they can use during any kind of STEM activity. The out-of-school time workforce tends to be skilled in positive youth development, but needs additional support feeling comfortable and confident facilitating STEM. So the Click to Science skills are designed to do just that and are developed through the use of our face-to-face and online lessons provided by Penn State Extension's Better Kid Care. We'll do a deep dive into the professional development model and how to use Click to Science for STEM professional development during the June 20th webinar. So go ahead and mark that on your calendars now because we'd love to see you come back for that one.
When we're talking about STEM and out-of-school time, one of the things we want to be sure is that the experience is different from STEM learning in school. In out-of-school time, youth have the opportunity to explore and follow their own interests. In formal STEM learning, it's often highly structured, it's mandatory, and there's assessments that are really important. That doesn't have to be the case in out-of-school time. So when we're talking about out-of-school time STEM, we're talking about informal STEM learning. And it is most successful when adults use positive youth development strategies to encourage and support youth during their STEM explorations. These explorations can help keep youth engaged in STEM, help them see themselves as someone who does and contributes to STEM, and prepare them for 21st century careers. As out-of-school time educators, you have the opportunity to capitalize on youth wonder and excitement and spark their interest in STEM. We want to really build on the skills that you have working with youth as you're leading those STEM activities. Today we're going to experience pieces of Click to Science PD resources that are selected to help staff become comfortable doing STEM with youth and developing the skills to facilitate STEM in out-of-school time. We've chosen to focus on 2 Click to Science skills today that are foundational to helping staff be prepared and feel comfortable leading STEM activities. These are preparing yourself to facilitate STEM and asking purposeful questions. Preparing yourself is about how you get ready for the activities, and you'll see strategies designed to help staff as they prepare for learning experiences. And as we talk about asking purposeful questions, you'll see strategies to learn how to develop and use questions that really deepen the STEM learning in the activities that you're leading.
So first, we'll focus on preparing yourself to facilitate STEM. Throughout this webinar, we'll be demonstrating using the Click to Science resources that I mentioned earlier as we watch skill videos and participate in group chats to engage those social and visual learning skills. We'll reference these resources in the files to download pod, and they are also available on our website if you click on the web links to each resource. STEM can be overwhelming and scary. Staff could be worried that they will be asked a question that they do not know the answer to or mess up the activity. We want staff and youth to know that not knowing the answer is okay, and that taking a detour during an activity to follow youth's lead is okay too. Co-inquiry is a successful strategy used in informal STEM learning. Co-inquiry occurs when the staff and youth are learning together and is a great way to encourage youth to find answers when staff don't know the answers. If youth are wondering about something, you can find out together. This strategy is discussed in more detail in the NASA and After School Programs report available in the web links pod, and that is at the top right of the screen. Another way for staff to feel comfortable and confident leading STEM learning experiences is through practice and planning. Taking time to practice the activity before leading it and planning out time to reflect, develop questions, and troubleshoot potential issues beforehand can help take the fear out of STEM. To illustrate this, we are going to watch the Time is on Your Side learning module video for the skill Preparing Yourself to Facilitate STEM. So while watching this video, I want you to be prepared to discuss what were the staff doing to prepare for STEM learning experiences, and what are other steps you normally take to prepare for STEM learning. Sandra is going to pull up the video for us, and if you have problems viewing the video, there's a link to it in the web links pod. Scroll through and click on the Building in Time video link to go to the site and watch it on your own while we view it in the webinar. So if there are any issues viewing it, go ahead and play the video. If you have any problems seeing it, please type that into the chat box. Otherwise, click the link in the web links and we will watch the video together. So I have them all in SharePod. So you just go in here and it's the name of the video and you just pull it up in there.
Would anyone else like to share what they've created? I'll go to Samantha first.
I added this to make it hover more to the bottom.
Being prepared for a STEM-related activity is the key to successful STEM learning. When you feel confident and comfortable leading a STEM-related activity, you can concentrate on the skills that make STEM click with youth. For true STEM learning to take place, it is vital to build in time for youth to reflect and process what is taking place. Watch and listen as Jean talks about the importance of being intentional about the outcomes for STEM learning by youth.
The process of all our activities is a starting meeting where we find out from the children what they know about a particular topic. So it's really important for us to know where they are, and then so we ask them, what do you know about electricity? Where have you used electricity? What have you been curious about electricity? And what would you like to know more about?
So why did that not work?
Because it didn't even fly.
It didn't even fly. And why? Because, so you had it like this.
Then we go through the activity itself, and then really important to draw out what they've learned, and our form of assessment is to have a reflection meeting. So we leave at least 10-15 minutes at the end of every class, and if we can't do that because we're running out of time, we make sure to be able to do it in the first thing in the second class.
Arkham, did you want to share your car with us first?
Yeah.
Okay.
It looks like a pilot ship in first thing. But at the very end, it's going to kind of tip over.
During this reflection meeting, we invite the children to share what they've created. We're asking them questions so that they will be able to share with us what they learned.
So what was really hard about making yours?
The thing that I got angry the most, it never fully went.
Never fully went down.
The questions are designed specifically for us to assess what they've learned during the process. And then we invite their peers to give them plussing ideas.
Ian, did you have a plus too?
Yeah. So you can add more lights to make it like fancy, and you can make it like switch like one by just pressing one over and then the other.
So we encourage them to stay away from feedback that sounds like, oh, why didn't you do it this way? Or why did you do it that way? And rather say, hey, here's an idea. Maybe you want to use that next time. And here's an idea, and maybe you want to use that next time.
So I appreciate you being kind and typing into the chat box that my mic was still hot while we were watching the video. So you heard us strategizing who was going to do what, and I appreciate you just letting us know and being kind about that. So right now, Sandra's pulled up 2 chat boxes, and in these chat boxes, we want you to share what the staff are doing to prepare for STEM learning experiences that you saw in the video that you just watched, and then also share your steps for preparing for STEM activities. So what do you do that helps you make STEM activities successful? I think sharing strategies with our peers is one of the best ways to learn. So we can provide some content, but you really are the experts at making STEM work in your programs. So we want to get some of your thoughts as well. So go ahead and take some time to share in those chat pods. And great, thank you so much everyone for sharing. So I noticed when you were all talking about what the staff were doing, a lot of people mentioned that they were beginning with what the youth already know, then going into the activity and finishing up with some reflection about what they learned. And so that's a great way to scaffold the lesson, to begin with what they already know, and then you can reference that as you're leading that activity, as well as following up with what they learned or what they still want to know. That's another good strategy to give youth the voice in programming, is asking them what they're still wondering about. And then I saw a lot of great steps coming in to the Your Steps chat pod. So if you're having struggles with preparing STEM activities, or you want to share some of these steps with your staff, that would be great, because it is really important to get the materials ready, sorted, prepared, make sure the space is ready, have some questions prepared to ask youth during the STEM activity, and then design some cool scenarios to frame your design challenges that will really capture and build kids' interest. So those are all great suggestions. I'm going to go ahead and take these chat pods down, and then Sandra is going to continue on with another activity and video.
A resource called Strategies for Facilitating STEM, and we're going to be pulling from that resource right now. This graphic that you see on the screen, Add Activity Adaptions, is from that resource. So if you want to get more information about that, it's the first file in the Downloads pod. And what we're going to be talking about here is how this resource can be used to help staff adapt activities in a way that's going to deepen the STEM learning. So I want you to take a moment to look at the graphic here and the different strategies or questions that you can ask yourself as you're looking at an activity. Some of these things may already be included in the activity, and some of them may not be. And the reason we have this graphic is so that if there isn't already in the activity time built in, for example, to reflect or redesign the solution in that activity, then you want to think about, can I adapt that and build that in or add that to the activity since it's not already there. That's how we want you to use this with staff. So as you look at this, think about how all of these parts come together in an activity. We're going to apply it to the activity we just saw, building with wooden cars. It was in the video you watched. But before we really try to adapt that activity, we want to understand it a little bit more. So we have an overview video that just tells you a little bit more about the activity and how it's structured and what they're actually trying to accomplish. So we're going to watch that video, and then we'll come back to think about how we could adapt it to really deepen the STEM learning.
So today we're going to be making some cars for the Nerdy Derby, and you guys, most of you guys had a chance to test out the cars, right?
In this activity, youth use a variety of materials to design and build cars that must stay on a track, gain enough velocity to go over a hump, and then exit the track at the end.
So what is between the wheels that helps make it spin?
These.
This.
The stick.
Okay, these are called axles, and these are what make the wheels spin.
There we go. Okay, now I don't care. I'm just going to let it move. So it's not burning, guys.
So what's happening?
I'm reducing the weight.
Oh, you're reducing the weight? Okay.
some more glue sticks. Okay. It doesn't look like a boat. Yeah. It looks like a passenger boat and a army boat.
So now that you've seen a little bit more about what that activity is about and what they're trying to accomplish, we want to think about how we could use the ideas in this graphic here to adapt that activity to really make sure that we're getting the most that we can out of it. We have a couple of questions we want you to reflect on as we're thinking about it. The first is, how will I know that youth are learning? And what could I do to build in time for reflection or for redesigning their cars? That's a couple of the points on that graphic that you want to be sure you're including in an activity. So Melissa's pulled up the chat pods for us, and we want you to respond in those pods. What do you think about those issues, and how would you apply them to? There's lots of great strategies, so take a moment to read through what other people have posted if you are done typing for yourself. One of the things I want to challenge you with is, what can we do other than asking good questions, which we're going to be talking more about, to really understand what youth are learning. We've got lots of good suggestions about questions, but I'd like to hear some other strategies as well. A lot of great suggestions coming through in the chat boxes here, and this video is recorded, so you will have the opportunity to come back later if you want to look at what people have put in the chat boxes and spend more time with those ideas, or take some of those ideas and use them yourselves. So this activity was adapted from that resource, Strategies to Facilitate STEM. And we do want you to download it and be prepared to do it with staff. What we hope you noticed here is that there's really a lot of power that comes from this sort of brainstorming. There's some really good ideas you had. In the ideas about how to know that youth are learning, we had some really good responses about using questions, how to really get those questions to hone in on what youth are learning, and we're going to be talking about that more in the second part of the webinar too. Another thing that we can do is observe what youth are doing. They're doing a lot of testing and redesigning. So as we observe what they're doing, we can tell a lot about what they're learning by the changes they're making, especially as we ask questions about why they're making changes. Some other strategies that were shared is using surveys. There's lots of ways you can get that input, whether it's on a piece of paper or maybe a survey type question where youth hold up their fingers instead of having to write something down to get that sort of pre-post assessment. You also talked about having them talk to each other. You can observe what they're saying to each other in their peer conversations to see what they're learning. Allow the students to be the teachers and share what they've learned. David pointed out that it really depends on how we're defining learning, how we're going to assess it. So if what the learning we're targeting is a skill or an action that youth can take, those are a little bit easier to observe. If it's content or understanding that we're targeting, then we might need to do some questioning in order to get to that. If we've defined key terms that we want them to use, being able to see how they're using those terms. If they're incorporating the vocabulary, like the word axle instead of stick in their discussion as they're using it, then we know that they're learning, that they're progressing using the vocabulary that we've identified for the activity. Now, the second question we had is, how do we build in that time for reflection or redesign? One of the things we often do is designate time at the end of the activity for reflection. But what happens in after school time is not everybody's here by the time we get to the end of the activity. Some youth had to leave. Some parents are waiting impatiently for their kids to be ready to go. So I like the idea that you had lots of strategies to build the reflection, and so it doesn't always have to come at the very end of the activity. One of the excellent suggestions we had from David was to move away from where they're designing and testing their cars in order to do the reflection. Being in a physically different space really makes it easier for the children to focus, so that's really important. At least turning their back to the space where they've been working, but even better, being physically away from it will help them focus and change what change their mode from doing to thinking, which is important in the reflection time. Some other strategies that I saw that I really liked is the idea of charting what they're learning as they're testing and redesigning. The results bulletin that Emma shared is a great strategy for doing that, keeping it simple by just using a Post-it note, but it gives you something to help you see what youth are learning, back to our first question, and also to help them learn from one another and builds that reflection in throughout the process instead of just at the end. And then, of course, there's other strategies like having them share what they've learned from it, or using journals to give them another way to share their learning. So thanks for all the feedback, and we do encourage you to download this activity so you can do it with your own staff.
Thank you so much, Sandra, for describing what you saw in the chat pod and really leading that great discussion about some of the strategies for facilitating those STEM activities. So now we're going to transition into learning how to use the Click to Science skill, asking purposeful questions. We've adapted the What Do You See resource for this portion of the webinar, and once again you can download this file from the file pod and follow along if you would like. A link is also available in the web links pod. But first, I think we should clarify what we mean by asking purposeful questions. So asking questions is an effective strategy to increase learning when staff identify why they are asking the question and plan questioning as part of the activity. The role of the frontline staff is critical in encouraging you to question and make predictions, two very important science and engineering skills. Questions are one of the many tools that can help you think more deeply about what they are observing and to explain their thinking. This skill is designed for staff to learn the best and most effective types of questions to use to help youth explain their thinking, make predictions, observe, and reflect. So not only is it just asking questions, but it's thinking about, why are you asking that question and when are you asking it? During what part of the activity are you asking it? So we're going to view the Using Questions for Many Purposes skill video together. And in this video, you will see Katie using questions and nonverbal cues to encourage youth to think more deeply about their answers and what is happening during a water filter activity. So while watching the video, I want you to think about the following questions and be prepared to share your thoughts with the group. So we're going to ask you to think about the examples of questions Katie asked. So while you're watching the video, note some of those examples. Think about how Katie's nonverbal communication supports her interaction with youth during this activity. And then maybe make a note of what other questions you would ask during the activity. So there's a lot to watch for and think about, but it's the examples of questions Katie asked, Katie's nonverbal communication, and then any other questions that you would ask during this activity. Once again, if you have problems viewing the video, there's a link to it in the web links pod. You click the Using Questions for Many Purposes video link to go to the site and watch it on your own while we view it in the webinar.
In this video, you will see the frontline staff person, Katie, working with a group of girls to design, test, and retest a water filter. Look for the variety of questions that she asks and how the youth respond to her questioning with deeper and clearer explanations, predictions, and observations.
So, with your partner, the first step that you're going to be doing is you're going to be brainstorming how to make your water filter. So you're going to build your filter in this top part, and then we're going to test it out as a group at the end to see whose filter does what. Which group would like to start sharing their material?
So we were thinking we would have our dirty materials on top of this. We would put the water through and it would come out and it would leave the dirty materials behind.
What do you think their different functions might be?
They all catch gravel or dirt.
Okay, so gravel and dirt is being caught. Do you think they'll catch the same size dirt?
No. and then all different things get
the cheesecloth. I think that's
materials.
Okay. Do you think the different size of the materials might affect it? Okay. Okay. Can you talk me through what you were thinking here?
We should put a little slit right there. And then we can put a straw. And the straw will just go through there.
Oh, so
but
you're
then
saying the straw will
dirty
come out the
water
top?
might go. Because this is supposed to filter out some dirty water, and this is supposed to filter out the rest.
Next, what do you see?
It's a little bit yellow, and like 1 or 2 pieces of charcoal got in it. So maybe we'll skip the charcoal next time.
So what do you think you can maybe try to get rid of some of that yellow color?
Maybe a little bit more of the cotton or a little bit of cheesecloth.
So maybe that's part of your redesign is where you want to put that, and you can add the other pieces. Everyone's going to get a chance to redesign these.
So Sandra is going to pull up some chat pods titled Examples of Questions Katie Asked, Katie's Nonverbal Communication, and what other questions could you ask? So while she gets those pulled up, go ahead and start typing in your responses in these breakout chat pods that are coming up on the screen. So once again, the examples of questions Katie asked, how Katie's nonverbal communication supports her interactions with youth, and then other questions you would ask during this activity. So I'm going to go ahead and mute my mic and give you time to think. Thank you so much for sharing all of those great responses. So we had some examples of the questions that Katie asked. A lot of the time she asked them to talk through what they were thinking about when they were creating their water filters or why they selected the materials that they did. Some specific questions, you know, how could you get that yellow color out of the water? Asking them about the materials and the size several times to focus the attention on that attribute of the materials. So the questions that she used really got the girls thinking about their designs and what they could change with their water filters to maybe improve them the next time around. Katie had great nonverbal communication that really prompted the youth to think deeper, and you could tell even without saying anything or just starting to say something that she was connecting with youth and that she was showing them interest. So a lot of people pointed out that she was on their level. She used her eyes to express interest and wonder. She nods a lot. So she's really good at connecting with the youth and making them feel like their ideas were important and mattered. And then some other questions that came up that were really great are, you know, thinking about how you could do something differently. Why did you decide to do one thing? And then I noticed some questions that came in a little bit later were connecting to what youth might have at home. So how does this remind you of what you have at home or compare to a water filter you would buy, when you might need to use something else like this? So that's another important skill, is connecting to the prior knowledge and experiences of youth in out-of-school time programs. And so that's another benefit of after school, is that you can connect it, you know, not just to the science concepts that they're learning in the classroom, but also to what they are experiencing outside, you know, at home, in their communities, and really get them thinking about how STEM is a part of everything we do. It's in every part of our lives. So I'm going to go ahead and close these chat pods, and then Sandra is going to talk through the types of purposeful questions and take us through another activity.
So as we're thinking about the skill of asking purposeful questions, it really requires that we clarify what the purpose of our question is, that we know what we're trying to accomplish with that question, and we're intentional about that. So we've here are 6 different types of questions that you might use during a STEM activity, different purposes for those questions. So the first one is clarifying. Clarifying questions are those that help you think more deeply about their initial ideas or responses. So when you're really trying to get them to hone in on what they're thinking or what their first ideas were. So you might ask youth to explain what happened when they used pantyhose for the water filter versus what happened when they used cheesecloth. And then use a clarifying question to get them to think deeper into their response to that question so that they're really examining the answer and thinking about it. Effective questions are the ones that prompt youth to think about their attitudes, values, or feelings. So you might ask them how they feel about water sanitation or the need for clean water in the world, how it impacts them when you're talking about the water filter activity, to help them think about their values around everyone in the world having clean water. The third one is the structure or process type of questions. And these are questions that help you think about the order and the setting in which the learning is occurring. For example, with the water filter activity, questions that increase their critical awareness encourage youth to explain their thought processes. You might ask them to explain why the pantyhose and cheesecloth filtered the water better, and then ask them, how do you know that? I think I jumped to, because that's a critical thinking question. So the structure or learning questions are about the order, how things are going. Then the next type of question is critical thinking. And so that example I just gave you of how do you know whether the pantyhose or the cheesecloth worked better, that's a critical awareness question. Sorry for getting those two combined together. The last type of question is a refocusing or prompting question that helps get them back into where you want them to be thinking, and again, to get them to think more deeply. So when you have youth that are starting to get distracted, they're starting to lose attention, they think they're done with their water filter, and you want to get them refocused and prompt them to get back into the activity, engage with it some more and redesign. You might ask them if they would drink the water that's been filtered through their water filter or serve it to their parents. Here you're trying to re-engage them with the prompting question and trying to get them to think about what you want them to be doing. We want to use questions to discover information. You might use a question like, I wonder, at the end of the activity, I wonder what would happen if. We want to keep using questions that encourage youth to be curious about what they're doing and about the problems they're solving. But we want the answers to be their own. We don't want to impose our answers upon them. So give them time to answer the questions and to ask their own questions so that they have control over learning and are using that science inquiry process. Questions can be used to reflect and process STEM activities, but they can also be used to make assessments of what the youth are learning, and we've talked about both those ways of using questions already today. But they can also be used to connect to careers and career pathways in STEM. So one of the handouts in the files to download pod is types of questions. And that's one that covers these different types of questions and how you can use them in a STEM activity and how to use them purposefully. So what we want you to do now, Melissa, can you explain the activity that we want them to do with that?
Absolutely. So we want you to open up that type of questions file in the download pod and think about a question that you would use during that water filter activity. So we kind of thought of some examples, but now I want all of you to think about a really purposeful question that if you were leading a similar activity to the water filter activity that you could use. And we want you to identify the question type, and maybe when, so during what part of the activity or situationally you would use that question. So we'll give you a couple of minutes to figure out what type of question you want to use and formulate a question. And then we want you to share those in that general chat box down at the bottom of the screen. So we don't have a separate chat pod for this. We thought it would be good just to share them generally here. But we want you to take some time to kind of look at those different types of questions that you can use during some activities and come up with some examples specific to the water filter activity that we've been talking about. So I will give you just a little bit of time to talk through that. and think through that and get that typed in here, and then we'll come back together and discuss it.
A couple of people typing, but not a lot. So I'm going to change what we're asking you to do here. I know I find it hard to download and look at a document while I'm on a webinar because I'm trying to focus on what's happening on the webinar. So rather than have you pull up that document, what I'd like you to do is I'm going to focus on some of the questions that we haven't really covered so far in the webinar. And one of those are those affective questions. Affective questions, I should say that a little bit more clearly, that focus on feelings, attitudes, values. I'd like to have you post some ideas in the chat box of affective questions you'd use with this water filter activity. I will clarify, because we didn't see it in the video as we watched it, that part of this activity is to think about the need for clean water worldwide. So affective questions might cover something related to that. Or they might also connect to attitudes toward yourself as a scientist or careers. So what are some questions you could use that would help engage youth with their values and their emotions, their attitudes in this science activity? And I think it's really important, as people are sharing their ideas, I just want to emphasize connecting with youth as a whole person and connecting with their emotions and their attitudes is just as important as connecting with their prior knowledge and experiences. So these are some really good questions and something that I think are worth thinking through before you, as you're preparing for an activity. How are you going to engage youth as a whole person? Making connections to what's happening locally to them, making connections to stories that they've heard in the news, like Flint, Michigan. Why is it important to people there, and what strategies could we use to meet those needs? Why do we need water filtration? Why is clean water important? These are all some really good questions that help youth connect with the activity in other ways other than the design sort of challenge that is posed in building their water filter, to help them see why it's important, and also to engage them in the value of STEM, that really the purpose of science and engineering is to improve the world around us. So we want them to see that science is something that helps people. And these are some good questions to help engage them in that experience. So thanks for your feedback on that and your thoughts on how to engage the whole child and get their emotions and their attitudes as well as their knowledge and their experiences as they're engaging in STEM. To you.
Thanks so much, Sandra. You did a great job kind of refocusing the activity when it was proving a little difficult to download, write responses to the questions, and do all of those things that we were asking. So I appreciate you stepping in and making that a meaningful learning experience and getting at the whole child learning. So this is kind of our wrap-up. We've covered most of our time today with a lot of content, and we hope you found that helpful. We learned more about the Click to Science skills, preparing yourself to facilitate STEM, and asking purposeful questions. We participated in some virtual professional development, shared ideas with each other, and you received resources you can implement in professional development experiences for your staff and volunteers. Preparing yourself to facilitate STEM focuses on how to get staff feeling comfortable and ready to lead STEM learning experiences. This includes being comfortable to not know the answer or be the expert. And also, when you do not know the answer, how to use co-inquiry to learn with youth. This process reinforces how the science inquiry process helps us find answers to our questions. The skill asking purposeful questions connects to staff's preparation and comfort level with STEM learning experiences. As staff become more comfortable facilitating these experiences, they will become more skilled at asking questions that encourage youth to dig deeper and find the answers for themselves. Youth will become more accustomed to not always asking for the answer and trying to find out the answers for themselves. Staff skilled in asking questions gives youth control over their learning and teaches youth to use the science inquiry process to answer their questions. So as I wrapped up what we did today, I want to take you to our Connect slide. We really want to thank you for joining us today, for participating in all of the chat activities, for watching the videos and bearing with us as if you had some connectivity issues. We have a little bit of time left for questions, so if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box now. As Timothy shared, a recording of the webinar will be available through the Network for Youth Success YouTube channel. And so if you want to go back and watch it in its entirety, please do so when it is available there. And then we encourage you to join us for next month's webinar on December 15th, focusing on supporting youth in your programs developing a STEM identity. We will have the registration open for that webinar tomorrow. So I just need to go in. It'll be the same registration link that it was for this webinar, but I'll go in and change some of the information so that's applicable to that webinar. And we hope to see you on December 15th. So if you have questions, go ahead and type those into the chat box and we'll answer those as they come. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us.
David, rather than try to type a response to your question, I'm going to just speak it. So if you didn't notice, the question David asked is about design challenges and do you give participants step-by-step instructions? I think it is very important in a design challenge to know step-by-step what the process is, and that may be what you're talking about, that process is well thought out. But I think the point of a design challenge is that there aren't a lot of instructions. One of the videos on the Click to Science website has an engineer talking about part of what engineering is learning how to build something when the instructions aren't out there for how to build it. And that's what we want youth to learn through design challenges. So I would encourage not having a clear, not even as yourself knowing exactly what the product is going to look like on a design challenge, having a highly structured process that they're going to go through, and the engineering design process can help structure that, but not giving them a lot of instructions. It's challenging, and it's something that you may have to start with some simpler challenges initially because youth aren't used to building things that they don't have answers to, they don't have instructions for. So it's a skill that is hard to. Question about where to find some design challenges. A couple of resources that I like to use. One of my favorites online free is Design Squad, which is a NPR national PBS, thank you. A PBS show. So if you just Google Design Squad PBS, you'll find that, and they have lots of great activities that are fairly simple and straightforward to start with. Another one that isn't quite free but is pretty inexpensive is Junk Drawer Robotics, which is a curriculum from National 4-H. And it has a series of design challenge activities that build on one another. So that may be another good starting place. Design It, Tim shared that that's another, I think that's a PBS series too, that you can find at, I'm sorry, that's Junk Drawer Robotics. There we go. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Melissa. Both good resources to find those simple engineering design challenges that help build the skills to design a solution, which is different than the skills they're applying as they're using particular content to solve a particular problem.